Morning, I'm Mike Valentine, and I'm running for Texas 6th District. And I'm here today with Brittany, and we're going to talk a little bit about our experience in Arlington. So, Brittany, tell me, what's your family like?
Well, I'm actually not a Texas native. My dad was actually born and raised in Texas, but I was born and raised in the Philippines, and I came out to Texas to go to college. But I've been to Texas, several times. And my family, some of my family is still here. Um, Not necessarily from Arlington, but this is where I went to college, and this is where I lived and expanded
Okay,
since I moved out here.
great.
Yes, sir.
Let me just give you a little background on me. Uh, I'm not from Texas originally. I'm from a small state called Pennsylvania. And I grew up there. I grew up among the Amish, which is maybe a little bit like rural Texas sometimes. But the idea is that, okay, I'm not originally from Texas, but I have lived in Texas for 3 years now. And so I'm getting to understand the people. And someday, maybe 20 years from now, 30 years from now, I can be a true Texan. But let's talk a little bit more about your experience here in, say, Arlington. You say you went to university here. What was your experience at university?
I actually really enjoyed university at UTA because of the diversity. There's so many people from all over the world at UTA, and I think it's actually one of the most diverse universities in North Texas.
Okay.
And the community around UTA has also grown. Closer to the campus, of course. However, if you move further away from the campus, there's less diversity. Um, but I feel like my experience there has been, was really great. I really did enjoy going to UTA. I enjoyed the people, and that's why I kind of stuck to Arlington because I enjoyed it out there.
Okay, great. I mean, Arlington is a nice town. There's no question about that. Um, the 6th District includes also, as many of you know, Ellis County and Navarro County. They're very different. Do you have much experience going down into the southern counties?
No, sir, not really. When we talk about that, even as millennials, see, I'm all 30 years old, and we say, "Oh, that's the country," so nobody really goes out there. The furthest we go is normally Mansfield out in Burleson, that area. But I think most of us think, "Oh, we don't go out there because it's not really." I mean, what's out there?
So it's possible that we're really talking about two different communities in maybe perspective, in traditions. And I think that's important for us to recognize that when we are trying to be a Texan, okay, does that mean we're an inner city Texan or we're a rural Texan? And so the needs of the people may be a little different.
Yes.
Growing up, I grew up uh, in the farming community. And so part of the things I had to do at school where I had to work on a dairy farm and milking cows and getting up at 5 in the morning to go out and milk the cows was pretty much a daily staple for me. The second thing that I did is I also harvested tobacco. So I have a little bit of the experience of the rural life. I'm not saying it's my favorite life. When I lived in Madagascar, uh, it was very rural. People lived in grass huts, dirt floors, no running water. And so that experience is very different from, let's say, working on a dairy farm. But I think all of us are a product of our experiences. Now, did you do your any additional education beyond university? Did you go further than that?
Well, yeah, I did my master's, of course,
Okay.
at UTA as well, sir. Yeah.
Okay.
And I did a few courses, and see, there's a huge difference. So I went to SMU, um, and picked up a couple courses there,
Okay.
and just digital marketing, nothing that I had to really be on campus for, but the vibe, the whole vibe was different.
Okay.
Yeah, and of course, SMU being right smack in the middle of Highland Park in Dallas, and UTA being right smack in the middle of Arlington, completely different. Completely different.
Okay.
Yeah.
So yeah, the communities are different.
Yeah.
Do you consider yourself a lifelong learner?
Oh yes, absolutely.
Great.
Yes, sir.
Okay. And like Brittany, I've continued my education. I'm attending online, okay, which is a great way to advance one's education, especially if you're not in the middle of everything. Fortunately, you've had the ability to go to UTA. I'm attending Andrews University right now doing my PhD. And, one of the things I like about that university is its diversity. You mentioned that earlier. Andrews is one of the most diverse universities in America. It's over 50% minority, and yet it's not a minority school, so to speak. So because of that diversity, I get a lot of different viewpoints in what we're trying to learn and understand. So Brittany, tell me a little bit more about life in Arlington.
Okay.
Do you think it's an exciting city life, or is it more of a bedroom community for you?
I think it's more of a bedroom community.
Okay.
People from art is I feel like there's a lot of older generations that live in Arlington and they continue to live here. Because I can't really say it's kind of the party or kind of where most people who are kind of early millennials would move out here, because most of the time the action is in Dallas.
Okay.
Or Fort Worth. Nobody really says, "Oh, I'm from Arlington." They never say that. They say, "Oh, I'm DFW," but they're actually from Arlington. However, I think Arlington is definitely growing. When I first moved out here, a lot of these open, empty land is now occupied by a lot of new businesses. And I feel like it's definitely growing, but there's still a lot of people who, of course, are conservative. And you have to also look like North Arlington and South Arlington, completely different demographics as well.
Okay. I didn't really know where the split was. I know that in our community here, there are a lot more immigrants, living here.
Yes.
And actually, I like that. I've lived overseas for 20 years and working in 6 different countries, and so I enjoy more of that immigrant feeling. And so, yeah, I do support immigration. I support legal immigration, and I think as legal immigrants, people bring a lot of talent to America.
Yeah.
We can talk about the non-invited guest issue later or something, but in looking at Arlington, can you identify any specific community concerns, or are there needs for the community that you can think of, or you personally, or what's going on?
Well, as far as maybe needs, maybe the school district, Arlington ISD. From my experience, a lot of my friends who have children, they would rather not send their kids to Arlington ISD.
Okay.
They're more, oh, I'm gonna live, because Mansfield ISD is supposed to be a lot better than Arlington ISD.
Okay.
So what they do is they'll move to closer to Mansfield, that is actually a vicinity of Mansfield ISD, so they can take their kids to Mansfield ISD. I personally never experienced it, but based on what my friends say, Arlington ISD is not the best. They definitely will choose Mansfield ISD a lot better, a lot more. And there's also crime, especially in South Arlington. I'm not sure if people know about like the Nextdoor app. Every time I open that, there's always something going on.
Okay.
Yeah. One of my friends who lives out down here in South Arlington, she was the one, I'm not sure if you guys heard about it, but the lady and the man who was walking, late that night, and they got robbed, and the man, unfortunately passed away from that incident. She was the one who reported to police because it was in her backyard.
Okay. Yeah.
So it's just safety in South Arlington.
Okay.
And even maybe education. I'm not 100% sure about it, but that's what I've been hearing. And I'm honestly going to look, into it further, because I do live in Arlington, and it's going to affect me.
Yeah, well, I don't know much about Arlington schools, and when we moved here, my son was attending the Louisville public online school. So in essence, he's being homeschooled, but through the ISD. And I, as an educator myself, I see there are a lot of weaknesses in that curriculum. It seems outdated. That's a polite way of saying it. There's not a lot of meat to it. It's very simplified, And, when you try and do an online program, of course, that may be the effect, maybe actual in teaching, in face-to-face, it's a little different. But because of the pandemic and because, we didn't know the community that well, we kept them in that Louisville program. Obviously, education is a hot button for parents, and we cannot ignore it. Um, it's an issue that takes time, though. And in Texas, fortunately, Texas controls its curriculum, so we can make changes, right? It's not part of the national program, but it does need, let's say, an upgrade to be more effective. And so the big dilemma I see for my son is in like his math class. It's very difficult. And when you're doing it online, you've got to have a parent involved. Otherwise, it just doesn't work. And so kids that are home because of the pandemic, trying to learn math, I can see that as just a monumental task. And there are no, let's say, support videos that people find, because I've always used Khan Academy in my teaching programs. And so Khan Academy has some great math tutorials, which help students, but there are no links to that. And so I find that's an issue. And it certainly needs explored. You mentioned another thing, safety and some crime issues, which, okay, as a city grows, you get more crime. And I don't know what the policing situation is as far as their funding and whether they can do things. I do know, and we'll get this a little bit political, one of the candidates wants to give ex-convicts, felons, whatever, people that were judicially involved, okay, guns.
That's a good way to put it.
She wants all former convicted people to be able to get guns. And I think from a broad humanitarian standpoint, maybe that makes some kind of sense. But I'm not sure, given the kind of crime issues and police issues that we have facing us today, that giving ex-convicts guns is such a good idea. What do you think? Should we do that?
Well,
or is that crazy?
That's kind of crazy and a little bit controversial. Of course, it depends on the offense.
Right.
But at the same
sure.
Yeah. But at the same time, we are already having a big problem with gun control, right? And a lot of people are so against it, of course, because we also want our freedom. However, giving somebody that same tool that they use to commit the crime,
I don't understand.
Is just.
But let me try to give you my point of view. I'm not just anti-felon or anti.
Yeah.
In prison, they have gangs, and people are forced to join one gang or another, and then become radicalized. And so we have a lot. The majority of ex-convicts are whites, okay, and then they become white supremacists. And now you're saying, okay, we're going to give guns back to white supremacists? Are you crazy? That right now they are not legally able to have guns. So I think giving guns to radicalized white supremacists who could become domestic terrorists is not something I would promote. I think that's a negative for the community, and I think the community needs to respond to this type of issue in that way. I could be wrong. I could be off base on this, but I think common sense says that might be a bad thing.
And I'm really glad that you were able to recognize that, because sometimes, even being white yourself, there's a discrepancy in understanding that, because the supremacy, it will, most people think it's going to prevail because of the color of your skin.
Right.
And being able to recognize that is what people miss out all the time. And then that's when they look back and say, well, we should have done this, but their judgment was being clouded by what they thought was good for the community because of the color of people's skin.
Right.
You're absolutely right.
And so, sure, the one problem in our system of justice for the last 30 years has been that there has been an over prosecution of Black males. I mean, it's just ridiculous. And most of it has to do with drug crimes. And so somebody's smoking marijuana and it's against the law, they get arrested, they go to jail. We can all, personally, I don't smoke it. but I think people have the right to. And so for that kind of crime, we had very stiff penalties. And look, we have to obey the law. That is part. You break the law, you're going to have to do the time. You do the crime, you do the time. That's kind of the way it works. And so I can understand the sympathy of saying, okay, somebody did a crime like that, and why are we restricting their ability to own guns? Well, we're restricting their ability to own guns because in prison, they develop relationships with people that may not be as, likable as that other person. And so because they develop those relations, if they do get into recidivism and commit new crimes, why are we arming them? So that's my big concern there. I don't want to pick on Joe Biden, but he is the author of a lot of this. And the reason why a lot of Black males were imprisoned over the last 30 years. Now we're pulling back from that, which is great. I don't know why it took us 30 years. I don't get it. Okay. And especially for crimes against yourself, because when you take a drug, whatever that drug is, you're committing a crime against yourself. And so why are we imprisoning people? I don't get that either. In other words, somebody needs some therapy or some counseling. We can talk about restricting movements because they broke the law. We're going to change that law. And it looks like even Texas is going to now become a state that accepts or allows that. That doesn't mean people are going to suddenly just go out and smoke doobies. Let's be honest. So, people are going to do what they're going to do. And I think we should allow them. And that's kind of the libertarian in me that says, hey, people can make their own decisions. And I don't see that. Anything else that kind of jumps into your mind about Arlington or Texas or even the nation?
Right now there's a lot of unrest with what's going on with this whole mask thing. It's been very controversial, of course, and Governor Abbott removing the mask mandate has been, people have been responding. It's them if you do, them if you don't, right? Some businesses would rather not fight with people. I was just speaking to one of my friends yesterday, and she said, "Oh, I had to call some QT corporate office because I saw people walking in and out even before the mask mandate was lifted." And they told her we'd rather not fight with the customers. Sometimes, if even for the safety of the people who work, in an establishment, they'd rather not argue and fight. Now, I see there's still a lot of people who are requiring masks, which is, good, because even if we live in a community and we don't want to follow the rules, sometimes we have to do it, for each other. We have to be a little bit more considerate, and it's not just about us,
Right.
Living in, I appreciate Arlington, because even like at the gym that I attend, for example, they lifted the mask mandate, and there's still a lot of people who wear masks. It's not just about me. It's about the person next to me, the person across me. And some people don't believe it's real. COVID isn't real, but I know people who have experienced it, families who have lost family members. So it is real. And sometimes the reality won't hit us until we actually have to deal with it in a personal level.
Right.
So then, just the whole mask mandate thing, I will still, going out to public places, I'm still going to wear my mask because I am respectful to the people who, are at high risk. But, prayerfully, everything, will be okay, and it will not get worse to how it was because nobody's really required to wear masks anymore.
Well, and I think what Governor Abbott said was that it's an individual decision. And I, at this point, it's been a year. Let's be honest.
Yeah.
Okay, it's been more than a year, and so people have a basic understanding. Okay, who am I talking to? Who am I visiting? Who am I meeting with? And so for myself, I still wear my mask. All right, and it's not because I'm bowing to the gods of government or something like that. I do it out of respect for my fellow person. I don't want to make the decision for them that I'm going to expose them or they're going to expose to me. So I'm happy to wear a mask for now. Do I think it's going to make a huge difference in my life? Probably not. Okay. Thankfully, I've been healthy for the last year, and I haven't had the flu or the cold either. And I've been wearing a mask. So what does that tell you? So yeah, we have anecdotal evidence that, okay, they work. We all, if we're scientists, we know that these are like microns, and they're going to slip through the cloth and the mask potentially. But let's just say for now, it's a good safety check. I mean, I wear my seatbelt when I drive. Okay. And the government, I remember in the 60s when we didn't have seatbelts and everybody was screaming, "Oh my gosh, we got to have a seatbelt or you're taking my freedom away." And, no. Okay. And I wear a helmet when I ride a motorcycle because I don't want to have my head smashed. So you can make your own judgment, okay, whether you should wear a mask or shouldn't wear a mask. Governor Abbott says you have a choice. Yeah. So make your choice. And I think that's where we need to be. I understand when businesses may require a mask. Okay, fine. I may not agree with that. But when their employees are wearing masks, I think it's just respectful that I do the same. Obviously, Brittany and I are not wearing masks right now. We actually work together a little bit, so we know each other. She knows I'm not sick. I know she's not sick, and okay, fine. Does that mean we could get each other sick? Well, yeah, okay. We'd also give each other the flu. So it's a risk reward type situation. But when I'm out with strangers, I kind of defer to the safety issue. Whether the mask is going to work, I'm not wearing two. It's just ridiculous. And so I agree with you. We need to be respectful of our neighbors. And so when we are given rights, and whether it's freedom of speech, gun ownership, mask mandates, we have to be respectful of our neighbors, and we have to follow community guidelines. Yes. All right. I don't want to take anybody's gun away. That's insane. But neither do I want people shooting each other. So the happy balance is, okay, the 30 million gun owners out there who have no intention of ever shooting anybody, well, that's who they are. Sure, we might have a few hundred people each year become stupid and do things. That's the price we pay as an open society. And some people say it's too high a price. I get that. I lived in a communist country for 15 years. No guns. Everybody was terrified of the police. The police were not your friend. And there was no way you could object. And the police didn't care, because if they didn't like you, they would just shoot you. So those are the kind of the extremes, right? We have a society where everybody's shooting each other, like maybe Mogadishu or Libya, right? Or we have a society like the US where we have an occasional problem. We need to deal with that, fix it, make sure it's not going to happen again, and move on. And that's how I feel. I don't know what your actual opinion is on guns. We're all Texans, kind of like guns.
Yeah. And I think, if you are a responsible owner, and just like what you said, if you respect the community, then that's all that there is to it. It's actually really simple. Like you said earlier, you're not even 100% sure about the masks, right? But you wear it because it's for the good of the community. So it's plain and simple. Even about guns. If you want a gun, if you have a gun, be responsible and respect the community. That's it. Don't go out into the park and go shooting at people because you had a disagreement with somebody. Yeah. You have to be responsible. Right. And honestly, as Americans, having the freedom or the right to own a gun, people always say freedom is not free. Yes, they're partially right, because it comes with responsibility. You can't just be free and running around shooting this, that, and the other because you had a disagreement over a game in a park where there are kids. There's the thing becomes a monopoly effect. Right. So you have to be smart, you have to be cautious, and you have to be responsible. And that's all there is to it. It's not a science equation. It's not a math problem. That's all there is to it.
Great. No, you're right. And well, we're out of time today. And so we're going to wrap this up and say thank you for watching. Please put your questions in the comments. I'll respond to them. And You guys have a great life. Thank you.
Like
Thank you,
everyone,
Brittany.
of course, absolutely.
All right.